and a man born in the era of oppression. Al-Khomeini al-Kabir, a brave and firm individual, a thorn in the eyes of the enemy and a blessing to the oppressed people of the world. Today and tonight we have gathered here to commemorate an individual whose vastness in character and greatness has leaped over the geography of nations and countries, from the heart of Qom to the very place where we are talking now. Tonight we are gathering a figure who, by the unanimous confession of all, whether they are allies or enemies, foes or friends, strong or weak, have all admitted to his most radical influence in the history of human society and politics. On that note, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to welcome you all to tonight's very major event commemorating the great character of Imam Khomeini, the annual 2014 Imam Khomeini Conference. I would like to invite our very special guests, the Ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Mr. Mahmoud Babai, His Eminence Sayyid Zaki Husseini, His Eminence Sheikh Ja'far Fadullah, His Eminence Sheikh Zaid Al-Salami, and His Eminence Sheikh Mami Farhad Al-Amiri. Thank you very much for coming. I'd like to begin tonight's program with words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and fill the atmosphere of this room with vibes of heavenly melodies. Please welcome with a loud salawat ala Muhammad, our talented and young reciter, Brother Ali Murhi. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala ali Muhammad.
محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل سنة.
إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم. And surely the Quran guides to what is most upright. I would like to thank our very young and talented reciter, Brother Ali Mulhi, and his very committed mother for bringing him here tonight and filling the atmosphere here with words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the words of Imam Khomeini rahmatullahi alayhi on the importance of Quran, do not neglect association of the Holy Quran. This is a divine book of light. For whatever the Muslims have had in the past and may have in the future is because by the grace of this sacred book. Without the Quran, the gate to the knowledge of God will be shut forever. We have prepared a short video which we'll be playing right now. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
سيفا صارما فرق الجند ولم يخش الخطا هو روح الله أدى واجبا حيث ركب الكفر بالذل اندثر ثار بسم الله سيفا صارما فرق الجند ولم يخش الخطا هو روح الله أدى واجبا حيث ركب الكفر بالذل اندثر
حين دوت من خميني ثورته حطمت كل مقاييس البشر ثورة من وحي حلم الأنبياء نهجها القرآن والفقه والأرقام اعرف الحق واتبع نهجه واعرف الباطل واترك ما أمر مهد الأمر وقم لا تنتظر فاستعد فورا فأنت المنتصر
ثار بسم الله سيفا صارما فرق الجند ولم يخش الخطا هو روح الله أدى واجبا حيث ركب الكفر بالذل اندثر ثار بسم الله سيفا صارما فرق الجند ولم يخش الخطا هو روح الله أدى واجبا حيث ركب الكفر بالذل اندثر
أمة نوراء حارت حولها أمنيات من ضعاف تحتضر يا طه قد أراقوا عزنا في سيول من دماء ومدم. صارت إسرائيل فينا صولة، قولي لا يبقي حياة أو يذر. فلنا إثر دعاء المضعفين صرح حزب الله عباس الفخر.
بسم الله سيفا صارما فرق الجند ولم يخش الخطر. هو روح الله أدى واجبا حيث ركب الكفر بالذل اندثر. ثار بسم الله سيفا صارما فرق الجند ولم يخش الخطر. هو روح الله أدى واجبا حيث ركب الكفر بالذل اندثر.
فتوالت بابن لبنان لنا بذرة التمهيد وازداد الثمن. ذاك نصر الله ليث زائر عمة سوداء والوجه أغر. رد إسرائيل في أوكارها فباق الرعديد يستوفي الحذر. جمع الأعداء حقد بارزون ونار الكفر كأصنام حجر.
بسم الله سيفا صارما فرق الجند ولم يخش الخطر. هو روح الله أدى واجبا حيث ركب الكفر بالذل اندثر. ثار بسم الله سيفا صارما فرق الجند ولم يخش الخطر. هو روح الله أدى واجبا حيث ركب الكفر بالذل اندثر.
لم يمت بل عاش فينا قائدا خاب نائي حسيني الأثر. قائد فذ كامي عالم راكب العلم سفينا وغضا. أكبري من دان الطف سرى من خراسان تجلى وظهر. نائب المهدي بالحق علي والذي قد جهل الحق خسر.
بسم الله سيفا صارما فرق الجند ولم يخش الخطر. هو روح الله أدى واجبا حيث ركب الكفر بالذل اندثر. ثار بسم الله سيفا صارما فرق الجند ولم يخش الخطر. هو روح الله أدى واجبا حيث ركب الكفر بالذل اندثر.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
As the video clearly showed and ensured for us all, Imam Khomeini was a multinational character. He was not only a leader for the Iranian people, nor for the believers in the Shia ideology, but he was a blessing and a leader to the whole of mankind, and in particular to the oppressed people of the world. In the words of the late Benazir Bhutto, the Islamic Republic of Iran has a great importance for us. The messages by Imam Khomeini stand as a guidance lamp for the Muslims, and the Muslim nations will benefit from the reflection of the illuminated, exalted thoughts of Imam in the future. I consider Iran as my own homeland, and the Muslim-dominated Pakistan is home to the Iranians as well. Nothing makes me as much as happier as a successful and powerful Iran in the region. I'd like to take this opportunity again to welcome the respected Ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and I'd like to now kindly ask you to share your important words with us. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum.
عليكم السلام.
Recite salawat, please. We have come together to commemorate the memory of Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi. His impacts on the geopolitics, Islamic thoughts, and governments are tremendous. He started a movement in which all Muslims around the globe started to revisit Islamic values and seek their identity under these values. Now, all the Muslims around the globe are proud of being Muslim and insist on their identity. If we study the development of political thoughts in recent history, in recent centuries, we would come to know that Muslim scholars during the past centuries have developed new theories in the field of Islamic political thoughts. This development has been unprecedented. But with the domination of Western or Eastern ideologies, the chances of putting these theories into practice was distant. In such a circumstance, Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi, relying on the support of masses, led Islamic revolution and established Islamic Republic of Iran. The main idea was to apply divine values of Islam to daily life of average people and Iranian society. Thus, it is necessary to delve into his thoughts and ideals. In brief, political thought of Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi has two important aspects. The first characteristics or aspect of Imam Khomeini's thought is establishing a meaningful relations between religion and politics. The basic tenets of Imam Khomeini political thought should be ascertained from his approach to the concepts of religion and politics. As far as the question of a political theory is concerned, Imam believed that we need not borrow anything from others to develop a theory of political thoughts, because Islam itself can provide all particulars of political theory. He rejected the idea of separation of religion from politics. The teaching of Islam encompasses all aspects of human life. Through establishing a just government, Muslims can bring about social justice. Therefore, it can be inferred that politics in Islam, while taking into account all physical and spiritual dimensions of man, is meant to guide human being toward perfection. By establishing a government based on this idea, he succeeded in establishing a meaningful relations between divine values and running a state. The second, or another salient feature of Imam Khomeini's political thought is doctrine of Vilayat Faqih. This concept did not receive proper attention before Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi. This concept is so prominent in his thought that the most of his political ideas should be interpreted with reference to this doctrine. It is a just and capable Jewish-based political system, assuming the leadership of the government in the absence of infallible imam. It is solid guarantee that the state is run based on spiritual values of Islam. Imam Khomeini has left legacies for us. We cannot honor the memory of Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi unless we value and preserve his legacies. Islamic Republic is his grand legacy. It cared for Islamic Ummah and served as a source of inspirations for all Muslims around the world. Since inception, Islamic Republic of Iran has faced many challenges and pressures. Various measures like sanctions are devised and implemented forcefully. Despite its adverse impact on average people, they could not attain the objectives which they were supposed to be attained. Iran is stronger than ever. No country, however powerful it may be, can dictate her wish on Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran is steadfast in pursuing policy of friendship and peaceful coexistence with other countries of the region and, of course, all countries in the world. Iran is always ready to resolve disputes through dialogue, but will never compromise the principles in which we do believe. To delve into the consequences and impacts of the thoughts and achievements of Imam Khomeini, we have to compare the stature and standing of Iran in the world before and after revolution. Undoubtedly, Iran has gained influence and strength, and as a nation with a vision independent of East and West, has to now be considered in any Middle Eastern issue that in itself is a change in global politics. The impacts of Islamic revolution on shaping world politics in the last 3 decades has been a powerful, providing the Muslims with a concrete model to see how a system independent of West or East can run a country. A country, despite pressure, stands steadfast and is not ready to compromise its principles. In all this, we need to have a true understanding of the reason behind these achievements. The main reason is the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, the thought and path of Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayh is manifested in the thoughts and path of Ayatollah Khomeini. We cannot be a true follower of Imam Khomeini unless we are true followers of Ayatollah Khomeini as our Wali Faqih, which is a valuable asset for us, and this concept is a prominent legacy of Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi, and it is incumbent upon all of us to value this legacy. Salawat.
خاتمه سخنان جناب سفیر محترم جمهوری اسلامی ایران آقای محمود بابایی آرزو دارم درود و سلام خود را به بنیانگذار عظیم جمهوری اسلامی ایران، بنیانگذار اندیشه ستیز با ظلم و رهبر کبیر مستضعفین جهان از طرف خویش و کل عزیزان اینجا برسانم و با تشکر و سپاس مضاعف از سخنانی که بیان فرمودید. از صمیم قلب آرزوی سلامتی، پایداری و موفقیت برای شما و از خداوند متعال خواهشمندیم و دعا میکنیم طول عمر و صحت کامل برای رهبر معظم انقلاب اسلامی امام سید علی خامنه‌ای به میمنت صلوات علی محمد و آل محمد. The second speaker for tonight, which I did pronounce his name initially by mistake, will be Sheikh Ja'far Fathullah. My apologies to His Eminence Sheikh Ja'far. Just for the screen, there's been a misconvenience, of course, by the Hertzville Civic Theatre management. We're hoping that we'll be able to use the main screen, but unfortunately we'll have to resort to the small screen, so we do apologize for that beforehand. Please welcome Sheikh Ja'far Fathullah to deliver his talk for tonight. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين وهو خير المعين الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيد الأنام شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصالحين وطبيب نفوس المؤمنين مولانا وسيدنا أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا إلى يوم الدين. Brothers and sisters, respected scholars, and a respected ambassador of Republic of Islamic Iran, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Inshallah, I'm not going to take too long from your time, only 5 to 10 minutes, short speech regarding to our beloved late Imam Ruhullah Khomeini Azim Ridwanullah Ta'ala alayh. Remembering this personality is not only our thinking that he is the great man. At the same time, we must try to follow his teaching and his footprint as well. This great person, the great leader of the Muslim Ummah, is not only among the Muslim accepted as a leader. There are so many non-Muslims, those who realize the quality of the leadership, and they do accept it, that person as a leader of the mankind. My dear brothers and sisters, now we were talking about as parent of the Imam Khomeini, rahmatullah alayh. I have come from my generation, my homeland is Burma. Burma is a country where the Buddhists dominate that country. Today those Buddhists are against of the Muslim in my country. Once, right after the revolution of the Iran in Burma, the Buddhists, they start to pick up the books of the Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayh. They tried to search in the market, and the government blocked, the Burmese government blocked all the books coming from Iran to our community in Burma. But those books never received to us, and it went out to the black market on the street. And the people from the street, they're selling these books, about the sayings of the Imam Khomeini, all the notes of the Imam Khomeini, and all these Buddhist monks, they sit down on the footpath and they try to buy and read it. And they realize they are being under the oppression. I'm giving you the one example. Those who are not Muslim, non-Muslim, those who are idols worshippers, they start to realize from this big Imam, this great leader, they have learned so many things. Yes, we are remembering Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi every year, not only in this Sydney, around the world. So many nations, they involved in this. And we need to understand his great job. What did he done? This Imam has to exile from Iran to Turkey and Iraq and Paris. Then after that he returned back to Iran. When he was in exile, he is not sitting by himself and relaxed. And those days he worked so hard. Every word he say, and those students around him, they wrote and they typed it, they noted everything and they sent it back to Iran. Those who are under the oppression of the Shah. And this great man, when the revolution started, I'll give you the one example. He used the akhlaq karima, akhlaq Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the way Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam spread the Islam among the kuffar Quraysh in Mecca. The same manner, this Imam Khomeini Azim, he told the people in Iran, in Tehran especially, when they start the revolution, and the soldiers got the permission to shoot down anyone in the demonstration. Imam Khomeini, rahmatullah alayhi, he gave the order to the followers, when the soldiers, they use the bullet, and you give them flour. Literally, all these Iranian brothers, they bought the flowers from everywhere. When the soldiers come to the crowd, they smile and wave their hand and give them the flowers. They hug the soldiers. They kiss the soldiers' cheek. The steel heart of the soldiers melted by the love of the people. Their gun pointed towards the people, the gun down towards the ground. This is how our leader, one word when he say that, the followers follow every step. My dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he say in the Quran, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin. Indeed, Allah will not change anything, whatever people they have. Hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Until they change themselves, then it's going to be achieved. And this is the proof we see that Iranian nation today, proudly they stood up among the Ummah Islam, giving the example how to stood up and confront with the tyrant of the world of superpower. This is a message from Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi. Let me say the last word, which is one of the word of the Imam Khomeini when he was speaking in Bahisht al-Zahra in Tehran, the Maqbara, the big one. Imam Khomeini, he say in that Bahisht al-Zahra, he say, we do not scare from their weapons. We do not scare from the superpower weapons. We do not scare from their number of soldiers, their power. But he say, but their culture. Ma nami tarsim as aslihayishu. Ma nami tarsim as qudrat hayishun. Wali farhangishun. My dear brothers and sisters, that's a very big word. I realize now we are living in the West. Now we are living in a different countries, not in an Islamic country. Even in the Islamic country, Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi, he say, we are not scared for anything except the culture of the West. It's to get inside the heart of the Muslim Ummah. That's destroying the Islam and Muslim Ummah. My dear brothers and sisters, if we sit down every year remembering this, the great leader, Imam Ruhullah Khomeini, then we have to change. We have to change within ourselves. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to change to that level. Insha'Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the guidance of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, all of the Ummah Islam around the world, all the oppressed one, whether they are Muslim or non-Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help them and guide them and save them from the tyranny of this world superpower, insha'Allah. Subhanaka rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillah rabbil alameen wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Jafar Fathullah, for that talk, enlightening many different aspects of Imam Khomeini's life, from politics to how he dealt with people and to how he dealt with his enemies. Just a kind of reminder, please do put your phones on silent or do switch them off, and if you do receive a call, please take the call outside. Imam Khomeini put a great emphasis on the position of youth in society. He believed that youth were the key figures in bringing reform and change in a society and a nation. As he gives advice to the youth, be thinking from now, be thinking from youth. Every step you take now is towards the grave. Whatever work you want to do it in your youth. In old age, you will only sleep and moan. As much as possible, serve the people in every way and perform all acts of worship in your youth. Know the value of your youth, because once you reach my age, you will not be able to do anything, like me who cannot do anything. Of course, like the humble character he is, he's saying he cannot do anything in his old, but many of us know what he achieved in his old age, many youth cannot achieve in hundreds of years. On that note, I would like to invite our youth speaker for tonight, Brother Haydar Adami, who will give a short talk on his journey to knowing more about Imam Khomeini rahmatullahi alayhi. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. From a young age, we enter this reality in a state of ignorance. This society, we are shaped and programmed by a school system the media, and the society we live in. We reach adulthood and then we are encouraged to become slaves for the system. To buy what we don't need because some subconscious motivation of the need for prestige and social status needs to be satisfied. We drown in debt because inflation will keep on going up and you'll pay it back all somehow. But then something happens. There is a fork in the road. You default on your loan, you lose your job, you have an accident, your health deteriorates, and then you start to crash and burn, and the materialistic, self-centered dream starts to disintegrate before your eyes. You are filled with anxiety and stress, and all you can think about is self-preservation. How will you survive? How will you make it? In this context, we come to a dilemma in our life where we are void of an eternal purpose, an all-encompassing, comprehensive plan for ourselves as individuals. We have no direction, just plodding along and churning away, repeating the same routines with only objective in place to satisfy our desires. We start to become philosophical and spend hours contemplating on a variety of issues that we were never conscious about in our lives while we were drowning in dunya. It is only when we've reached this crossroad in our lives that we can really appreciate the personality of Imam Khomeini and his contribution to human civilization. Then, just like now, the Imam knew that this program for mankind was slowly being implemented all over the world. That it was not a random, self-initiated phenomena, but a strategy to enslave, exploit the vulnerable masses by constructing a system where authority will never be challenged, people will be preoccupied, subservient, powerless, and perpetually enslaved. In this sea of atheism and polytheism, from the holy city of Qom, Imam Khomeini was like a beacon of light to the rest of the world. The Imam was like a lifesaver who came to the world to save the world from the direction it was heading in, which was a materialistic, idol-worshipping dead end. As his great-grandfather, the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his pure progeny, did in the Arabian Peninsula centuries before, he would stand up against injustice, challenge the tyrants of his time, and establish firmly in the soil of this earth the message of monotheism. Imam Khomeini would repeat the same performance but in a contemporary context. He would confront and overthrow the Shah of Iran, who was a puppet of the global imperialistic hegemony, who oppressed the people of Iran through the illegitimate government of the Shah by means of terror and coercion in order to steal the wealth of that nation. From the pulpit of the masjid, he would educate the masses on the practical implementation of monotheism through action, not just theory. He would provide hope to the oppressed masses that there was an alternative to the current situation, that the goal of creating a pious, prosperous society where all its citizens would have the opportunity to achieve their perfection and live with justice was realizable. In the West, he cracked the false sense of invincibility the global imperialistic powers seemed to portray. He showed how the power of spirituality could defeat superpowers even though they had access to unlimited resources and were protected by powerful militaries. After reviewing this, we analysed the Imam's life to identify the legacy he left behind. From the start of time up until the present, there was always a divine project in progress. After centuries of oppression and persecution, the dreams of the Imams would finally become true. With the Islamic Revolution in 1979, a society based on faith was established. In this new society, a citizen would not be measured by his or her wealth, physical beauty, or social class, but on their piety. From this, we take two important lessons that were the factors of his success: political and social activism, and self-purification and self-building. We live in a world where political activism is being radicalized on one side and manipulated on the other. We see religious fanatics proclaiming to be the true leaders of Islam in theory, but in practice they contradict the basic principles of Islam through their barbarity and cruelty. Then we see these same ideological fanatics being branded one day as bad terrorists and the other day as good terrorists, all depending on the agenda of the global hegemony. Political Islam is seen today by many as the root cause to social disintegration, backwardness, and the lack of progress in the Muslim world. This is the road political Islam was supposed to take, a self-destructive destiny. A plan engineered by the enemies of Islam to delete Islam as a force in politics and society forever. But this destiny was altered thanks to the Islamic Revolution. The great achievement of the Islamic Revolution was the establishment of the Islamic Republic of Iran. After 3 decades of sanctions and international isolation, the Islamic Republic has managed to weather all the storms, overcome all the difficulties, and stand firm as the leader of global resistance axis against imperialism. Imam Khomeini smashed the misconception that religion and politics were two antonyms, that religion had no place in politics. The Imam's political activism never contradicted the Quran, never contradicted the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. It was never void of sound logic and intellect. He was precise, proportionate, and justified in his actions. His policies reflected the needs of society without compromising Islamic values. The Imam provided an alternative to extremism and slavery, freedom through spirituality. Through his political activism, he proved that the only system that can save humanity was Islam. Neither capitalism nor communism could substitute for a divinely created system. Through studying the political activism of the Imam, we will find countless lessons and strategies that we can implement in our communities in order to produce a positive change to society. We as Muslims living in Australia should never feel that because we are a minority living in a non-Muslim country that we don't share the responsibility of promoting the Islamic viewpoint in our domestic politics. It is our duty to inject into the public discussion a spiritual Islamic perspective on political issues. The second most important aspect of Imam Khomeini's life was that he revitalized the importance of self-building, self-purification with the goal of reaching one's perfection. After a lifetime of study, he produced one of his greatest masterpieces, the book entitled 40 Hadith. In this book, he provides a roadmap and a guide on how a spiritual traveller in pursuit of obtaining perfection can cleanse the soul of all spiritual diseases. He brings to life the true essence of life and the fundamental reason as to why, together with this world, we were created, which was simply to worship God. He outlines the root causes and signs of all spiritual diseases. With each disease, he breaks them down into levels of intensity. He provides a methodology on how to diagnose each disease and then provides prescriptions on how to cure them. Conflict begins with the violation of a person's rights. People violate one another's rights through ignorance because they are unable to overcome or tame their carnal desires. If mankind as a whole were to implement the remedies of spiritual purification detailed in his book titled 40 Hadith, you would see the creation of a global utopia void of injustice, oppression, and filled with justice, security, and prosperity. From this jewel the Imam left us behind, we should endeavour to learn the principles of self-purification and self-building in order to be better equipped and enabled to improve our personal lives, but at the same time our social relationships. Also, we should use it as a platform for preparation of accomplishing that final divine project of establishing God's kingdom on earth, the government of Imam Hujjaj al-Sharif. As a final note, if we wish to keep the flame of the revolution burning, we must endeavour to implement in our own lives and our communities the values taught by the Imam. Take a stance, even if it takes you out of your comfort zone. Take action and don't be complacent. Live up to your responsibilities to promote the values of Islam before it is too late and you look back at the past with regret at missed opportunities of attaining nearness to Allah. Become a zahid and detach yourself from this world before it overcomes you and leaves you in the grave lonely, impoverished, with an account filled with sins instead of good deeds. Look deeper inside yourself and work on beautifying your inner self more than your outer self. The root of self-perfection is character building. When you have the best character, you have become the best of people. In these lessons we take from our late Imam, hopefully it will lead us to success both in this world and in the hereafter. Assalamu alaikum, salawat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Ahsan, jazakumullah khair. Thank you, brother, for that talk. Once again, a very deep talk, many dimensions, and many different things talked about. I'd like to ask the future speakers to please keep their talks short and brief, as we have many tight schedules. We're trying to get through things as quick as possible. I'd like to also take this opportunity to welcome His Eminence Sayyid Muhammad Musawi and Sheikh Ahmed Waqar. Thank you for coming tonight and honoring our gathering. We have prepared another short video which will be soon played by our technical department. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أنه قائد وإمام، وهذا الإنسان العظيم الذي لم يكن إنسانا عاديا، لم يكن زعيما سياسيا بمعنى الزعامة السياسية، الإمام الذي كان فقيها مجتهدا وعارفا متألقا شامخا وفيلسوفا ومفكرا وإنسانا قائدا في ساحات الجهاد، وواعيا يملك وعي التاريخ ووعي الرسالة ووعي الحاضر ووعي الصديق والعدو وحجم المؤامرات. هذا الإمام التاريخي، هذا الإمام الاستثنائي، هذا الإمام إمام الثوار وقائد المجاهدين والمضحين. نحن بحاجة إلى هكذا قادة، نحن بحاجة إلى هكذا أئمة، نحن بحاجة إلى هكذا أمراء، نحن بحاجة إلى طليعة من هذا النوع.
ميزة الإمام الخميني أنه كان كما يقول الشهيد مطهري، كان الإمام يؤمن بربه ويؤمن بشعبه ويؤمن بدربه، بالطريق والسبيل الذي يسلكه. وقدم الإمام رضوان الله تعالى عليه هذا الانتصار لكل مستضعف ولكل مظلوم ولكل معذب ولكل مضطهد في هذا العالم، مسلما كان أم غير مسلم. عندما ذهب إليه إخواننا في سنة 1982 قال لهم: قاتلوا هذا العدو في بلدكم، حولوا لبنان إلى مقبرة للغزاة الصهاينة، ابدأوا من الصفر، اتكلوا على الله ولا تنتظروا أحدا في هذا العالم، واعلموا أنكم منتصرون. هذا الكلام قبل أكثر من 18 سنة. في الوقت الذي كان في لبنان كان منطق المقاومة غريبا، في الوقت الذي كان ينظر فيه للواقعية والعين التي لا تقاوم المخرز، كان الإمام يأمر بالمقاومة ويرى راياتها المنتصرة ترتفع فوق بنت جبيل ومرجعيون وحاصبية وكل قرى وبلدات الشريط الحدودي المحتل. منذ البداية حرضنا على القتال والجهاد وأنار لنا الطريق وملأ قلوبنا يقينا وتوكلا على الله وبشرنا بالنصر، وكان النصر. أيضا كان يرى الإمام في الشباب اللبناني وفي الشباب الفلسطيني مفخرة الأمة العربية والإسلامية، وكان يقول وكتب بخط يده قبل أكثر من 14 عاما أن جهاد هؤلاء الشباب، أن جهاد هذه المقاومة سوف يكون حجة على العالم الإسلامي، على
Very hard to speak afterwards because you become overwhelmed by the atmosphere of his talk. Nonetheless, Imam Khomeini rahmatullahi alayh, as many of you know, was not only a political figure, nor merely a religious scholar. In the world of creativity and art, his divan or collection of poetry is a legacy of his tender soul and divine touch in the work of art. His poetry is dedicated nothing and none to but his only love in this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His poetry is filled with vivid imageries and metaphors from the likes of Hafiz himself. A translated version of one of his poems is as follows, named Life's Caravan. My life has reached its end, but yet my friend has not come. My story now concludes, but the conclusion to this pain has not come. The goblet of death is at hand, yet I never had my turn at the goblet of wine. The years have come and gone, but a sweetheart's tenderness has not come. The bird of my spirit's been trapped and fallen without wings to fly, is confined to this cage. Yet she who should set me free, who should break apart this cage, has not come. The lovers of her darling face are all nameless and without vestige, while for those of fame, even a whiff of the air of her affection has not come. In rank and file of the caravan of the lovers of her face, they wait expectantly. To whom then should I complain that at last the soul-quickening beloved has come? She bestows the spirit of the dead and seizes the soul of the lovers. To the ignorant alone, belief in such a ravishing love has not come. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. ندعو الحاج حسين ديراني لإلقاء كلمة باللغة العربية فاستقبلوه بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
بعد كلام السيد حسن نصر الله واحد بيشعر بعد ما بيقدر يحكي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلائق وأعز المرسلين، الصادق الأمين المحمود الأحمد المصطفى الأمجد حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحبه الأخيار المنتجبين. السلام على صاحب الذكرى الإمام الراحل روح الله الموسوي الخميني رضوان الله تعالى عليه، الإخوة والأخوات، العلماء الأفاضل، سعادة سفير الجمهورية الإسلامية الدكتور محمود بابائي ومرافقيه، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. 25 عاما مضت وشمسك يا إمامي لم تغب، فأنت حي فينا كأنك بالأمس رحلت عندما عدت إلى أرض إيران منتصرا مظفرا قام باستقبالك الملايين بشوق وحنين، وعندما رحلت حملت على أكف الملائكة المقربين والملايين من الشعب الإيراني المفجوع الحزين. كان مسكنك بيتا من بيوت المستضعفين، وبعد رحيلك أصبح مرقدك قبلة للزائرين وروضة من رياض الأولياء الصالحين. إمامي كم كان وجودك عظيم، حققت بثورتك حلم الأنبياء والمرسلين، وأنشأت دولة المستضعفين الممهدين، وحطمت عروش الطغاة الظالمين. من جدك الحسين ورثت شجاعة الثائرين، من جدك علي ورثت وثبة المجاهدين، من جدك الحسن ورثت هيبة العارفين. أيقظت فينا الوعي النائم، أيقظت فينا الضمير، وأعدت هويتنا إسلامية لا شرقية لا غربية. إمامي لذكرى رحيلك تدمع العيون، لرحيلك شجون وشجون، ما جف الدمع يوما في مقلتي مذ رحلت، وما أيتمني الدهر إلا رحيلك. كنت أرى فيك إبراهيم عليه السلام محطم الأصنام، وأنت حطمت عرش الشاه بخنصرك. وكنت أرى فيك موسى عليه السلام حين فلق البحر بعصاه، وأنت فلقت البحار بجلال وجهك. كنت أرى فيك عيسى عليه السلام وهو يحيي الموتى، وأنت أحييت أمة ميتة بلمسة كفيك. كنت أرى فيك النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله حين دعا لدين الله، وأنت دعيت له بقولك والعمل. أرى فيك عليا والحسن والحسين عليهم السلام. لا تتهموني بالغلو وأنا أتحدث عن معجزة القرن العشرين. كل دول العالم تتخذ قراراتها من مباني لا حدود لحجمها، فالبيت الأبيض، الكرملين، قصر الإليزيه والقصر الملكي. إلا الإمام الخميني الراحل كانت أنظار العالم تتوجه إلى حسينية جمكران، وغرفة صغيرة ملاصقة في شارع ضيق ولكنها كبيرة بحجم الكون. كيف لا وفيها سر الإمام المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. إخوتي أخواتي، أريد أن أختصر في حضرة العلماء وأقول: إمامي نم قرير العين مبتسما فسلوانا إننا نراك هيبة ونهجا ووقارا في خليفتك قائد الثورة وقبطان سفينتك وحافظي سرك الولي الفقيه الإمام السيد علي الخامنائي دام ظله. سفينتك قادها خليفتك إلى بر الأمان، وأصبحت دولة الجمهورية الإسلامية في إيران دولة نووية سلمية، دولة صناعية متطورة رغم الحصار والإعصار، تواجه الاستكبار العالمي، تصنع الانتصارات، دولة تدافع عن حقوقها ومستعدة لصد أي عدوان، دولة تحمي المستضعفين من لبنان إلى سوريا والعراق واليمن وفلسطين، دولة تردع ولا تعتدي، دولة تنشد الأمن والأمان العالمي، دولة تقف في وجه الإرهاب العالمي الموجه والمدعوم من أمريكا وحلفائها. فسلام الله عليك سيدي وإمامي يوم ولدت ويوم انتقلت إلى الرفيق الأعلى ويوم تبعث حيا، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكرا على هذه الكلمة الطيبة من العزيز الحاج أبو علي ديراني. I wish I could thank him in the same way, in the same much passion he had in Arabic, but unfortunately my Arabic is not that good. Thank you very much for pumping that much energy into tonight's gathering. As for the next part, I would like to invite Sayyid Ahmed Zaki Husseini to deliver his talk for tonight. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Dear brothers and sisters, Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi, as an outstanding leader, was able to achieve this great victory by following the teachings of Quran and the guidelines established by Rasulullah and A'immah. Anybody who uses these guidelines, these teachings, can achieve high goals. Albert Einstein used to say, I'm more interested in equations than politics, because politics are temporary, for the short term, but equations are forever. So Imam Khomeini was using those equations, those formulas, those ma'iyar and criteria, and that's why he was so strong, influential, and a great mobilizer of masses all over the Muslim world, especially in the Shia community. Only after Islamic revolution in Iran, the Shia mazhab has gained so greatness, so expansion. In no stage of the history, as much as Ahl Sunnah has become Shia, no stage has shown that the same number has come to the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt. Millions and tens of millions in Africa, in Asia, hundreds of thousands of people in Europe, in America, and tens of thousands in Australia. Very scholarly, educated, cultured people. But my talk is not only about this, which has caused so many conflicts in the Muslim world, because the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt is gaining ground, especially in the Middle East. And that's why a lot of rulers in the Arab world, in the Muslim country, including the government in Malaysia and so many other places, are alarmed. Before talking about the personality and the perception of Imam Khomeini as an enlightened leader, I would like to just give you a very relevant thought in regard to not feel any fear because of this animosity which are showered against us. And that is, when you have enemy, it means you're strong, it means you're there. When you're attacked, it means you're powerful and you're active. About 20 years ago, before the demise of communism, there were so many articles, books, publications targeted against communism in the West. In so many even Muslim countries. In America, there was a special magazine called Problems of Communism. But now you don't see and hear anything against communism. Why? Because it's a weak ideology. It is marginalized. It is isolated. There is the talk about Islam, Iran, Imam Khomeini, Ayatollah Khamenei, and all these shows you are there, you're strong, you're active, and that's why you have caused all these conflicts, not because you're against them, no, we are against nobody. Imam Khomeini was not against the West. It is certain circles in the West who are against Imam Khomeini. As Quran says, Quran is shifa for everybody, as long as he has iman in it. It is only the zalimeen, the oppressors, who will suffer losses because of the Quran. Otherwise, the principle is, the asl is that the Quran is وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. It is a rahmah for everybody, the Prophet and the Quran, and the Imam as a leader. Anyway, please keep in mind that all this propaganda against you is because you are active, because you're dynamic, because you're there. My talk about the personality of Imam Khomeini as an enlightened leader has the following examples. Of course, it's a short time and I can't give more details. Imam Khomeini, contrary to the public perception in certain circles in the West, which wants to promote Imam as a reactionary, backward, dictatorial person, he was a very progressive, enlightened, a very intellectual sort of leader. And these are the examples. Once upon a time, there was an election in Iran, and the person who was supported by Imam Khomeini in the city of Khomeini lost the election, and the person who was the rival of that nominee won. Someone called Imam office from Khomeini and said, "Sir, your nominee has lost the election, but the rival group has been able to gain majority. What can we do? I'm sorry for giving you this bad news." And Imam said, "It's a good news. It's not a bad news. Because in my birthplace, someone who is not from my faction or whatever you call it, the other person has been able to gain majority." Don't you think it shows a degree of freedom? Imam Khomeini was asked in France, what would be the position of communists, atheists in Iran after the establishment of Islamic Republic? And he said, the communists are free to maneuver in Iran as long as they are not engaged in plots. And another statement Imam Khomeini said that all logics will be answered logically. Any school of thought logic will be rationally answered. And even deviated groups will be free to maneuver in Iran as long as they are not launching any armed struggle against the system. And as you know, no system can tolerate an armed struggle against its infrastructure. It's all over the world. So Imam Khomeini was given permission even for deviated groups. And only after the declaration of armed struggle against Islamic Republic, the groups like Mujahideen Khalq were declared as illegal. Otherwise, before, there was freedom of speech. More than after this declaration, there was debates and discussions between communists and Muslims. And I have got those CDs, those videos, this is in YouTube, very scholarly debates. And only Imam Khomeini was not an enlightened leader. It is Islam which is training enlightened personalities, enlightened followers. Ayatollah Mutahhari sent a letter to the Communist Party of former Soviet Union asking them to send the communist Russian leaders to debate with them in order to prove communism is a false ideology. Isn't that a very intellectual, enlightened approach? Imam Khomeini, once upon a time, was strongly criticizing the Shah's regime because Shah was saying that we give freedom for the people. And Imam said this is a crime to make a statement like this. Why? Because freedom is not your disposal to give it to someone else. It is the innate right of the human being. How come you declare to say that we give you freedom? And then Imam said that anybody is free to criticize. And Imam said that the president in Iran shouldn't follow the same guideline and promote the same code of conduct and ideology. Because if a foreigner comes to this country, he shouldn't think that everybody is following the same tendency or faction. No, we want you to have clashes of opinions. Unfortunately, in our Muslim society, most of our masses, even intellectuals and academics, are not mature enough to benefit from this freedom. It is the problem which is with the community, especially with the educated elites who are secular, westernized, not really Muslim. So that's why they create conflicts and clashes, and the system is making some trouble for them, and they create trouble for the people. Anyway, Imam Khomeini was a very enlightened leader. One of the other examples of enlightenment of Imam is the confirmation of Ayatollah Khomeini as a leader. Because Ayatollah Khomeini is not a very conservative traditional leader among the Islamic scholars. He's a very liberal, is a very open-minded person, liberal with the positive connotation of the word, not negative, because liberal can mean in a positive way. According to one Australian writer, she had described Ayatollah Mutahari as the most liberal disciple or follower or student of Imam Khomeini. So confirmation of Ayatollah Khomeini as a leader after him shows how intellectual and enlightened he was, because Ayatollah Khomeini himself is a very open-minded, a very democratic person, and a very studious person who is not only aware of Islam, which he should be in the first stage, he is aware of the thoughts and systems in the West. According to one report by the BBC World Service, someone who was at the same cell, same prison with Ayatollah Khomeini, he said that Ayatollah Khomeini was more aware of communism than I as one of the communist elites. By the same token, he is a man of literature, he is expert in music, philosophy, and he is so able and so strong that now in a region which is full of clashes and conflicts and explosions, suicides, terrorism, coup d'etat, assassination, Iran is shining like a candle, safe and secure, and challenging the very major superpowers of the world. Not challenging militarily, no, in a very ideological level. So that's why Iran is a very safe and secure country. No coup d'etat has been able to be successful in Iran. So this shows a very deep insight of the leadership. And because there is a major contrast between the personality and perception of Imam Khomeini and Fahd, these two systems are not tolerating each other. Because what the Lebanese in the South Lebanon did is embarrassing Saudi Arabia. Imam Khomeini, when they wanted to call the system, they wanted to name Iran as Hukumat Islami. Especially Bani Sadr was promoting this position, but Imam said, no, Jumhuri Islami is better, because Islamic Republic is more progressive, more popular, more democratic. Even Imam affirmed and confirmed the word democracy. But the democracy in Iran is a more committed one, committed to a specific school of thought, which makes it less vulnerable, because the price of democracy in the third world country is a very hasty government, a short-lived government, because the other groups who are supported by foreigners, they will very easily destabilize the system and gain ground. But if a democracy, if a government is committed to a particular religion, which in this case is Islam, then that democracy is more solid and valid. Anyway, I've got so many other examples of proving Imam Khomeini as an enlightened leader, but alhamdulillah, most of you are already aware, and I don't want to take the time of the other speakers, but please study about Imam Khomeini. Please read and ask questions, and the more you read, the braver you become, the wiser you become, and the more confident you become. Because Imam Khomeini, please keep in mind, Jerusalem Times, when Imam Khomeini died, wrote, and I read it in Sydney about 19 years ago, that the story of Khomeini was the story of success. Khomeini was able to defeat Shah, the leftists, the royalists, those reactionary ulama and so many other groups. Only Saddam was able to survive. He couldn't do it, but you know that the Saddam was having the worst experience of defeat after the passing away of Imam Khomeini. So Imam Khomeini was the embodiment of the name Aziz of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
من به خال لبت ای دوست گرفتار شدم، چشم بیمار تو را دیدم و بیمار شدم. فارغ از خود شدم و کوس انالحق بزدم، همچو منصور خریدار سر دار شدم. غم دلدار فکنده است به جانم شرری، که به جان آمدم و شهره بازار شدم. I'd like to thank Sayyid Zaki with that beautiful poem written by Imam Khomeini himself. And thank you for his important speech, which mainly was on the topic of diversity of thought and how Imam Khomeini rahmatullahi alayh tried to facilitate that within the boundaries of Islam and the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. And as truly asserted by His Eminence Sayyid Zaki, the BBC did title their documentary about Imam Khomeini as the men who changed the world. And as Bishop Capuche says, Imam Khomeini was the father of the world's weak, and his absence is a great sorrow for the benefit of the world. Please, I would like to now welcome Haj Hamid Hasib, former president of Nabi Akram Islamic Center, to deliver a poem, one of Imam Khomeini's poems, of course, in the Farsi language. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
سلام علیکم و رحمت الله و برکاته. وقت تنگ است، من حرف برای گفتن ندارم. بزرگان نشستن. تسلیت دارم به این مناسبت این امام بزرگ و یاد دارم یک خاطره را که یک ربع قرن پیش 25 سال پیش شب به خاطر هفتم امام خمینی گرفتیم. یک برچاری جمعیت نبود در شهر سیدنی، ولی الحمدلله این فکر گسترش پیدا کرده و بزرگ شده و دوستان امام امشب آمدن. بعد از 25 سال می‌بینم یک جمعیت بزرگ میخوان برای امام خمینی مجلس داشته باشن. همون شعری که در کتاب خودشان است امو رو میخوانم و وقت میگذارم برای بزرگان و عزیزان. الا یا حی از ساقی ز می پرساز جامم را، که از جانم فرو ریزد هوای ننگ و نامم را. از آن می ریز در جامم که جانم را فنا سازد، برون سازد ز هستی، برون سازد ز هستی استه نیرنگ و دامم را. از آن میدی که جانم را ز قید خود رها سازد، به خود گیرد زمامم را، فرو ریزد مقامم را. از آن میدی که در خلوتگی رندان بی حرمت به هم کوبد سجودم را، به هم ریزد قیامم را. نبودی در حریم قدس گل رویان میخانه، که از هر روزنی هایم گلی گیرد لجامم را. روم در جرگه پیران از خود بیخبر شاید، برون سازد ز جانم به می افکار خامم را. تو ای پیک سبکباران دریای هدم از من، به دریادار آن وادی رسان مدح و سلامم را. به ساغر ختم کردم این هدم اندر عدم نامه، و پیر صومعه برگو ببین حسن ختامم را. برای خوشنودی روی امام خمینی بلند صلوات.
تشکر مضاعف از حاج حمید حسیب برای شعری که برای ارائه فرمودن مجلس ما رو مزین فرمودن برای سلامتی ایشان و موفقیت فامیلشان صلوات محمد پسندی بفرمایید. For our third speaker of the night, I would like to invite Sheikh Zaid Al-Salami to conduct his talk. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله محمد وآله الطاهرين. Thank you for the organizers very much for facilitating such a well-prepared program. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala add this along to the mizan of your hasanat, inshaAllah. What I prepared tonight is something very simple, and that being how we are able to understand the unique and rare personality of Imam Khomeini in such a way that explains to us what kind of multi-dimensional personality he had. We know very well that throughout the history of the major ghaiba, there have been many ulama that have come and gone. However, it's never been the case where there is so much continuous focus on a particular scholar, like how we as the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and even those outside of the Shia school of thought, have a high level of admiration and reverence to this great personality. Is it because of him having such a high level of expertise in multidisciplinary sciences? He was a faqih, he was a marja' taqleed, he was a philosopher, he was an expert in ilm al-hadith, he was well versed in ilm al-rijal, he was a famous poet, he was a arif, and the list goes on. What we have to bear witness to that are the many works that are yet, until today, yet to be discovered as far as the dimensions of his ilmi capability. Which is why it is no coincidence that we refer to him as Al-Imam Al-Khomeini, and we don't in general use that very special, rare title other than when we are applying it to this personality. And without doubt, when we look at these multidisciplinary sciences that he was well versed in, all of that was a part of the process of how he was able to be so successful in grasping onto the power of the hearts of people, and that of course leading to the successful revolution of the Islamic Republic of Iran. He was someone that was well engaged in the society. He himself classified himself as being someone of the lower level of everyone else in the society. He was the defender of the mustad'afin. He brought about a new understanding of politics. Prior to that, everyone had a particular notion of politics being nothing other than being sly and cunningness, or in the words that he himself had used, where the assumption of politics is for a person to be someone that does things based on manipulation and, of course, far from the correct moral or religious precepts. A word that was used is something along the lines of politics is that we understand of today is pedar sukhtagi. But when we look at the way Sayyidina Imam Khomeini introduced the Islamic Revolution of Iran and established that government that wasn't only based on democracy but had a hierarchy that went all the way up to a theocratic establishment of Islamic Shi'i governments that could be able to be implemented in such a very large population like that of Iran. The revolutionary personality of Imam Khomeini is what made him so successful. We know very well that prior to the revolution, there was no voice for the Shia world. Nobody even understood what the Ahlul Bayt school of thought was in the wider sense. We were an undiminished schism of Islam, and all of a sudden, the followers of Ahlul Bayt were able to proudly say that they now have a voice so strong that it is backed by a whole government. This revolution that he led and he so successfully was able to manage and establish was not by him being in such a high level of society, but being in a very small corner of one of the alleys in Qom, where he lived most of his life post-revolution, and then after that transferring and moving to Tehran for no reason other than health reasons. So all of that, the masterminding, the headquarters, was nothing other than a prayer rug, a little table, and nothing else. All of that can be seen in today's world as far as reaping all of the rewards of this great personality. Now, Imam Khomeini rahmatullahi alayh, and what we can learn from his extremely simple and humble personality is he was very strict when it came to certain things, which was why he was able to achieve those high levels, not only in the ilmi perspective of his personality, but also in the social, political atmosphere of the whole world. Number one, he was extremely strict when it came to time management. His close family members and all those around him testify to the fact that he had a very strict time management program that he worked on a daily basis. There were so many things that he needed to accomplish throughout the day, where he would allocate hours each day to receive audience and to receive people who had queries or questions or problems related not only to the religious side of their lives, but also to their own personal lives. He allocated time for his scientific development and his ilmi side in giving his lessons in the Hawza Ilmiya, whether that be in Qom or whether that was transferred later on to Tehran, or all of the other things that could be considered in that regard. We have his courage. He was willing to stand not only with honor in bringing about Islamic revolution, but also he was able to stand against the istikbar al-alami of the time, the global tyranny that happened at the time. Not only did he do that, he was proudly saying that something that has been marginalized for such a long time, Sharia itself, is now going to be a part of the primary constitution of the Islamic Revolution of Iran. If that is not something that every single Muslim needs to be proud of than what is. So the reality of the facts is, any way we look at, and these are only two examples, and Brother Ali is looking at me, these are only two examples of how we can learn on a practical level, what we can take with us on a practical level back home after showing that admiration that we have to Imam Khomeini. And let it be a pinpoint of being able to distinguish between the true path of Ahlul Bayt and that who oppose, or those who oppose Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. We're not only talking about sectarianism, we're also talking about, unfortunately, the very groups that could exist within our own Shia circles, accusing this and accusing that and branding this and saying that, Battery and all these other things that unfortunately have come in to infiltrate within our society and is truly polluting all of us. We can understand that the same way as Sayyid al-Imam never compromised for the sake of religion, we should also never compromise for the sake of our religion if it is in defense of our religion and promoting that very religion that all of our ulama prior to him and him himself stood for. This itself is a very important lesson. He done all of this with love. He done all of this with understanding. The message that he brought was a message of learning, of loving what you have, loving Islam, loving Ahlul Bayt, loving your society, stand with what you represent, and most importantly, represent it at whatever cost it may be. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi tahirin.
وتصاحب فليكن انتخابك للأصحاب من بين أولئك الصالحين والمتدينين والمهتمين بالأمور المعنوية ممن لا تغرهم زخارف الدنيا ولا يتعلقون بها ولا يسعون في جمع المال وممن لا تلوث الذنوب مجالسهم ومحافلهم. الإمام الخميني قدس سره.
الشباب عن ثقافتهم وأدبهم والقيم الذاتية وجرهم نحو الغرب. أوصي جميع الأجيال المتعاقبة أن يحفظوا الجامعات من الانحراف والانبهار بالغرب وصونوها نجاة لأنفسكم وبلدكم العزيز. الإمام الخميني قدس سره.
I'd like to appreciate Sheikh Sayyid al-Salami for delivering that talk and stressing an important aspect of Imam Khomeini's life, and that being his time management. For one of his famous quotes is that he would never change an hour of recreation for an hour of study, nor an hour of study for an hour of recreation, stressing the importance of how time management and scheduling should be in our life. I'd like to invite the final speaker of the night, and after that we'll have refreshments, al-atmiyah, then we'll have refreshment, there's food, so stay focused for one more talk inshallah and we'll be done. Please invite His Eminence Sheikh Mami Farhat Al-Amili to deliver his talk. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله خالق العباد، ساطع المهاد، مسيل الوهاد، ومخضب النجاد، الدال على وجوده بخلقه وبمحدث خلقه على أزليته، وعلى تشابههم أن لا شبه له. ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيد البشر الداعي إلى الطاعة والعبادة، الفاتح لأبواب السعادة، صاحب المقام المحمود والحوض المورود واللواء المعقود، عين الوجود وقبلة السجود، من كان نبياً وآدم بين الماء والطين، المحمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. Respected scholars, respected ambassador, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Holy Book, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Allah Azza wa Jal in this verse speaks about the philosophy behind sending prophets. The message of every prophet consists of 3 dimensions: reciting the revelation, purifying people, and then teaching them the book and the wisdom. The Prophets ﷺ didn't come to recite the revelations as theories only. That's why when we examine the verse, we'll see that it started with the first dimension, reciting the revelation, reciting the theories, and it ended with the 3rd dimension, teaching people the book and wisdom. Teaching people the book, teaching them the theories, and then teaching them the wisdom in order for them to practice the theories in the outside. And between both of the dimensions, we have the 2nd dimension, which is to purify the people. Because if someone cannot clean himself and destroy the idols of his soul, he will not be able to comprehend or to apply the orders of Allah and the laws of Allah Azza wa Jal. When the 3 dimensions are joined together, they can become the foundation of a massive change in a society. From here we can say that all prophets were revolutionists. In other words, the prophets ﷺ were sent by Allah to be the leaders of the revolutions. And after the prophets, our Imams ﷺ, they became the leaders of the revolution. That's why if you study the lives of the Ahlul Bayt ﷺ, you will find that during the time of every Imam, he had a revolution that he was leading. Let it be the revolution, the massive revolution of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, that he changed the whole world through it. Or let it be the political revolution during the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Sayyidah al-Zahra salawatullahi alayhim. Or let it be the military revolution during the time of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Or let it be the educational revolution during the time of Imam al-Baqir and as-Sadiq salawatullahi alayhim. They all had a revolution that they were leading. But our main concern is during the time of the occultation. We believe during the time of the major occultation of Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallah ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif, the authority was given by him to the jurists, to the fuqaha. The Shia were introduced by the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam to a new system by the name of Wilayatul Faqih. We hear a lot of propaganda about this system, Wilayatul Faqih. But we say that although our scholars, they have different views about the capacity of this authority, but nevertheless they all believe in it as a theory. All the Shia believe that the Imam Ajjalallah ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif, he gave the authority to the fuqaha during the time of the major occultation. Therefore, it is not only the obligation of the prophets and the imams alayhimus salam to become the leaders and start a revolution. It is also the obligation of the faqih, the jurist, the scholar during the time of the major occultation to follow the three dimensions that were mentioned in the verse. Reciting the revelation by referring back to the Quran and to the path of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. We have an authentic and an accepted narration according to the majority of the Muslims from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa that he says, إِنِّي تَارِكٌ فِيكُمُ الثَّقَلَيْنِ أو الثِّقْلَيْنِ كِتَابُ اللَّهِ وَعِتْرَةِ أَهْلَ بَيْتِي. I leave behind you two heavy things, the book of Allah and my household. They will never be separated because they are two sides of the same coin. Therefore, for any revolution, for any leader to be successful, he must link his revolution and he must link his movement to the book of Allah and to the path of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Then he must work on purifying people through spirituality. And then he will teach people how to practice the theories outside. Only one man was able to extract this theory out of the books and practice it outside. This man is the great Ruhullah al-Khomeini, the one who established the government of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. We are not from those who worship scholars. And we do not take them as idols, as some people like to accuse us. And we do not compare anyone to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Some people, they say you put Imam al-Khomeini and you compare him to Ahlul Bayt. A'udhu billah. We do not follow such ghulu. We are not from those people. And we do not accept to compare anyone with Ahlul Bayt. But we didn't have the privilege of living during the time of our Master Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we didn't have the privilege to live during the time of our Imams alayhimus salam. And the truth is that we didn't understand the message of the Prophet and the movement of Ahlul Bayt until Ruhullah al-Khomeini appeared. This is the truth. We understood the message of Rasulullah through Ruhullah. We became part of the movement of Ali and Az-Zahra through Ruhullah. We lived the revolution of Sayyid al-Shuhada through Ruhullah. We understood the meaning of standing alone in front of the oppressors and shouting Hayhata minna dhilla through Ruhullah. We were taught our responsibilities and obligations towards the master of our time through Ruhullah. Our people, they learned how important it is to connect to the righteous scholars through Ruhullah. It is the great Ruhullah al-Khomeini who taught us to be brave and proud to follow the wilayah of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. This is the reason why we connect to Imam Khomeini, Qaddasallahu nafsahu zakiyya. And this is the reason why, after all these years, we feel that he is alive. We feel that he is alive in our community through every single brother and sister who attended tonight. We feel that he is alive in our community through every single one of you who attended tonight. We feel that he is alive in the movement of the oppressed people around the world. We feel that he is alive in the Palestinian revolution. We feel that he is alive in the Bahraini revolution. We feel that he is alive in the victory that took place in South Lebanon. We feel that he is alive in the brave soldiers who are protecting the shrine of Sayyida Zainab alayha salam in Syria. And we feel that he is alive through our wise supreme leader, Al-Imam Khomeini, the one who is holding the flag of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. روي عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أنه قال: إن الله يبعث لهذه الأمة على رأس كل 100 سنة من يجدد لها دينها. والإمام روح الله الخميني قدس الله نفسه الزكية هو نموذج حي لمضمون هذا الحديث الشريف. فقد كان مجددا في الفقه والعقيدة والأخلاق والثقافة حتى انقادت إليه القلوب. ومع كل المعاناة التي عاناها والتي مر بها لم يستسلم. فالسالك في دروب الحب لا يقول أبدا لا أستطيع. ولذا كان الإمام الخميني ذلك العاشق الأكبر دائما يردد: سأسافر من بحر لبحر ومن مطار إلى مطار ومن سفينة إلى سفينة ولكن سأظل أقاوم. من هذا المنطلق يصح وصف حركة الإمام الخميني بأنها ثورة العشق الإلهي التي أحيت الدين في أنفسنا وجعلتنا في زمن سيغبطنا عليه اللاحقون. من خلال ثورة الإمام الخميني عشنا الإسلام كحركة رسالية فعالة في المجتمع. ولذلك أيها الأحبة نقول لكم: لا تجعلوا الإسلام يثار فيكم في أوقات الصلاة وفي المناسبات، ولا تتقوقعوا في زواياكم المظلمة، بل انفتحوا على الإسلام انفتاحا واعيا مكللا بالحكمة. تعالوا لكي نعيش الإسلام معا، الإسلام الفكر، الإسلام الواقع، الإسلام التحدي، والإسلام في عملية رد التحدي حتى نكون كالبنيان المرصوص. هذا ما تعلمناه من روح الله. فسلام الله على روحك أيها الخميني العظيم. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.